So I'd like to welcome everybody today. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for making time to attend this webinar and listen to what we're going to share with you. While we're waiting for people to come in and get into their seats, I am going to share with you our accommodations information. This information shares with you the fact that we have a captioning service. The link to the captioning service is in our published featured feed. If you click on the speech bubble in your upper right hand corner of your screen, that opens up the featured feed and the live Q&A feed where you can type your questions when we open it up. But in the featured feed, you'll see this link. You can cut and paste it into your browser, and that will allow you access to the CAPS service. It's a special captioning service. You can also switch on the Teams subtitles and captioning as well, and the instructions are on this slide if interested. And for anybody who would like a transcript, those are posted on our website within 48 hours of our webinar, and you can access it through this link. The link will be shared with you afterwards in our survey email, which you should see quite soon after this event. So I'm just going to leave this for a moment while people get into their seats. Great, and like I said, thank you very much for joining us, and I'm now going to hand over to Adriana Cruz, the Executive Director of the Economic Development and Tourism team in the Office of the Governor. Over to you, Adriana, to open our event.
Thank you, Kelly. Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for joining us today. As Kelly said, I'm Adriana Cruz. I'm the Executive Director of the Economic Development and Tourism Office in the Office of Governor Greg Abbott. And on behalf of Governor Abbott and the team at the Economic Development and Tourism Office, I want to welcome you and thank you for joining us today for this Governor's Small Business webinar. Through these webinars, our goal is to provide you information and connect you with local resources in your area that can help you to find success. Under Governor Abbott's leadership, our office is committed to working with you to make sure Texas continues to be ranked as the top state in the country to start a business and to be an entrepreneur. Today, we've brought together a great panel of experts for you from the U.S. Small Business Administration and 2 of our regional small business development centers to talk about dynamic financial planning, as well as to give us an update on the federal funding resources and the recently passed American Rescue Plan Act. Texas's small business owners are the backbone of our state's economy. Because of you, Texas continues to be the economic engine of our nation. And by working together, we'll continue the strong trajectory of economic growth for Texas. Please don't hesitate to reach out to our small business assistance team, Kelly, Jarvis, and Sonia, and if we can help you in any way so that you can continue to find success in the Lone Star State. And now, Kelly, back over to you.
That's great, and thank you, Adriana. So I'd like to introduce our panelists to you today. We have David Elizondo. He's the Deputy Director of the Small Business Administration in Central Texas, based in San Antonio. We also have Gina Woodward. She is a Senior Executive with the Small Business Development Center in the West Texas A&M University. And we also have Angelo Picarillo from the Small Business Development Center in Texas A&M International University. So thank you guys for joining us, and our audience is going to have the opportunity to hear from each of them, but also ask direct questions to them. Before I start to talk to our panel, I would just like to mention we have our live Q&A feed. It's not actually open right now, and that slide is a little incorrect. We keep it closed for the first while we talk about frequently asked questions. And then when we get through about 3/4 of the frequently asked questions in about 10 minutes, we'll open the feed. You can type your question into the new feed. If you look at the upper right hand corner of your screen, like I mentioned before, you can click on the speech bubble with a question mark. That opens up the feed where you can type your questions. It's closed right now. We will open it and I'll let you know when it's open. Okay, and I'll talk a little more about that momentarily. And in the meantime, I am going to move along now and I'm going to start talking to our panelists. And I am going to welcome David Elizondo. David, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. First of all, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you fine.
Okay, because I've experienced one too many instances of Murphy's Law when I'm doing webinars, so wanted to make sure. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is David Elizondo, the Deputy District Director for the San Antonio District Office. Our office covers Central Texas, so that encompasses San Antonio, Austin, San Angelo, Victoria, and everything in between, essentially. So we cover a total of 55 counties. And as Adriana mentioned, small businesses are the backbone of the state's economy, but also the nation's economy. And of course, we wanted to share the latest and greatest information on behalf of the Small Business Administration. Back when this pandemic started, back in April, the CARES Act was passed, which encompasses the Paycheck Protection Program and the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. These are two different vehicles. So what I'm going to do is take a step back, and then we'll talk about what's happening moving forward. So the Paycheck Protection Program is a loan program that's administered through SBA participating lenders. One of the questions I saw early on is where can I go to submit the application? And that is directly through the bankers that are participating in the program. So unlike the IDLE program, which is administered directly through the SBA, the PPP loans are administered through the banks. When this program first kicked off, there was a one-year deferment for the IDLE, and that has since been extended. So if you made an IDLE loan in the calendar year 2020, that loan was deferred for another 12 months, so in total 24 months. If you recently got approved for the IDLE in calendar year 2021, the program has been extended another 6 months, so in total 18 months. Please note there is interest that's being accrued for the time being, but we wanted to give you all, the small business owners, an opportunity to bounce back from any disasters that you are experiencing, or any pandemics for that matter. The PPP, moving over to that. When the program first went live, there was a time frame when to exhaust it, which was 8 weeks. That was since extended to 24 weeks under the Flexibility Act, and the program initially closed August 8th of last year. But under the Economic Aid Act, the program has since came back to light, and the deadline was March 31st, but I'm proud to announce that as of yesterday, President Biden did sign the law that the PPP program has been extended until May 31st. So keep that in mind as you are considering first draw, second draw, that you have now until May 31st to apply. And there's been some revisions made to the PPP that I'll further discuss under the American Rescue Plan. Moving on to that, I got some key highlighted points that I'm going to talk about now about the American Rescue Plan. So if I'm reading here, bear with me. So the American Rescue Plan Act was signed by President Biden on March 11th, which will change the course of the pandemic's economic crisis, supporting all small businesses. So that's for-profit and nonprofit that this bill does encompass. The lead agency for the PPP, of course, as it stands, is SBA, but we do work in collaboration with Department of Treasury and the IRS as well. What it does is it supplements the existing disaster assistance programs that have been in existence. So again, that's IDLE, the Targeted IDLE, the PPP, but also new programs such as the Shutter Venues Operators Grant, which I'll further discuss. So let's break it down. Let's talk about exactly how the American Rescue Plan Act impacts each program area. So for the PPP, the American Rescue Plan Act provides an additional $7.25 billion. And that's partially the reason why I strongly believe the program was extended until May 31st. Initially, there were only certain for-profits and, certain nonprofits that could apply, and certain for-profits under the SBA side standards table. So I would highly recommend going to SBA's page and going to their frequently asked documents, frequently asked questions documents to make sure that you are eligible to apply. Under the disaster loan, so you all may recall when the IDLE program first went live, there was an option for an IDLE advance. So certain folks were able to get a grant program essentially under this vehicle. And with the American Rescue Plan Act, an additional $15 billion has been injected under the Targeted IDLE Advance. There's no need to apply for this. So if you qualified for the IDLE Advance before and you are designated in a low income area, you may be eligible to receive additional fundings under the Targeted IDLE Advance. Now, the big question that a lot of folks are starting to ask about is the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. And that's going to go live here in the near future. I strongly believe that the Shutter Venues Operators Grant is the emphasis for the agency as of right now. So under the American Rescue Plan Act, there's going to be $28.6 billion allocated for small business owners to apply, with a maximum of $5 million of a grants per location, with an aggregate total of $10 million. Per the Act, the restaurant revitalization grants will provide economic relief to restaurants, food stands, food trucks. I know Austin's big on food trucks, food carts, caterers, inns, taverns, bars, lounges, brew pubs, tasting rooms, among other categories that fit under the restaurants. Most importantly, is any establishment with 20 or fewer locations is eligible. Now, who is not eligible to apply for the Restaurant Revitalization Fund is entities that include state or local government operated funds, and then those that applied for the SVOG. So it's kind of like you're applying for one grant or the other. Now, speaking about the Shutter Venues Operators Grant, on a positive note, the portal goes live April 8th. And what we're encouraging folks to do today is go on to systemsforwardmanagement.gov. It's also sam.gov to create a profile. So once the portal does go live on April 8th, you have your profile ready to go, and you can apply for the grants. Almost on a daily basis, the document on the SBA's page is being updated with how do I calculate for the SVOG, who's eligible for the SVOG. And so initially, whenever the SVOG was first made or first announced, rather, folks were not able to apply if they applied for the PPP second draw. But now, under the Economic Aid Act, and especially under the American Rescue Plan, folks can now apply for both a second draw PPP and the SVOG. And how do you calculate that? Again, we do have a calculator on the SBA's page to make sure that you're getting the optimal amount. And then lastly, I want to talk about the Community Navigator Pilot Program. So another vehicle under the American Rescue Plan is the Community Navigator Pilot Program, which provides $175 million to establish a program and conduct outreach effort. We acknowledge under the SBA and the SBDCs here too that any way we can help out small businesses come back from this pandemic, we're here to help them out. So consider this another opportunity for folks to get some sort of assistance. It's not made available just yet. Right now, again, the emphasis is going to be the SVOG, which goes live in 8 days. But those that are eager to learn more about the Community Navigator pilot program can visit sba.gov/navigators. And the navigators are to include private nonprofit organizations, resource partners, states, tribes, units of local government that will conduct outreach and deliver free education and technical assistance services to current or prospective owners of eligible small businesses. So there's still a lot of information coming out about the American Rescue Plan and how we're going to implement the vehicles that fall under this particular program. So again, the biggest highlights from today is the Paycheck Protection Program has indeed been extended until May 31st. And folks that want to apply for the Economic Injury Disaster Loan can still apply, as that deadline has also been extended until December 31st of 2021. The original deadline was December 31st, but of course, I don't think a lot of people anticipated that we would still be under this pandemic fast forward a year. So both programs are available as we speak today. Kelly, I'll turn it back to you, ma'am.
Excellent, David, and thank you so much. That was an enormous amount of information in a short space of time. Really appreciate you doing that. And for anybody who didn't manage to keep up with that, this recording is going to be available to you afterwards. You can get to it from the email we'll send you. It's available on our website and YouTube as well. And if I could make one suggestion, that everybody should check the Small Business Administration website. They have a great website. They update it all the time. Frequently asked questions are up there. Like David said, calculators are up there. There's all the tools you need to be able to figure out how you can get to the federal funding that's just been announced and has been around for the last year as well. So thanks, David. I'm going to move along and I'm going to talk to Gina Woodward. Thank you, Gina, for joining us again.
Always good to be here. Thanks, Kelly.
Yes, Gina's fantastic, has joined us several times. It's great to have you here. Now, Gina, I'm going to ask you my first question, which is, can you tell us about the steps of a dynamic financial plan and why is it important to have one?
Sure. I think the last time I was with you, we were talking about dynamic business plans, and if anybody was here for that webinar, a lot of this is going to sound familiar because it's a lot of the same planning steps that you'll use. First thing that I think people need to think about when they're working on dynamic financial planning is that you're not doing it because there's a problem. It's not a bad thing. It's something that you should be doing on a regular basis to maybe catch some problems, but also take advantage of some opportunities that there might be for your business and harness that. So when I'm doing financial planning with my clients, there are 5 steps that we're looking at. The first one is just sit down and determine exactly what is the current situation, what's working and what's not working. You want to review that performance. Certainly you can do it on your own. You can learn to do that on your own. I really prefer that clients do that either with me or maybe they do that with their CPA. If for nothing else than just having another set of eyes on the data, I may look at things differently than the client looks at it. Their CPA may look at things differently. So I think it's always valuable to have another set of eyes on your financial data. And you're not just looking at cash when you're doing this financial planning in this first step. Cash is king, and that's always going to be the case, but we have 3 financial statements for a good reason. It's not just a cash flow statement. We've also got a balance sheet and a profit and loss statement. You need to be thinking about the data that's on all 3 of those. We might be looking at our assets. I mean, your assets have one purpose, and that is to make you money. We need to determine, are those assets making you money? Is that working? If you have accounts receivable or accounts payable, we need to look at those and figure out what those turns are per month. If you've got accounts receivable that's taking, maybe 60 days, we'll look at some industry standards and we may want to think about reducing that. Look at inventory turns. How many times is your inventory turning every month? There's no standard that applies to every business. Of course, it depends on your industry. And if you're working with an SBDC, some other consultant or your CPA, they're probably going to be able to get their hands on some benchmark information for you. So another good reason to bring in a third party when you're working on your financial planning. Something else that you might be looking at here is your pricing, and I'll go over that in a little bit. We may look at lowering, not very often. Most of the time we're looking at increasing prices. So that's the first step, is just looking at what is my current status. The second step is setting some goals to either correct the problems that you've come across, or hopefully what we're going to be doing more of is capitalizing on some of those opportunities, some of the strengths that you have found in your business. In this step, we're setting some general goals. It's things like, I want to increase my cash flow. Maybe I've come across one of the lines in my inventory that's doing really well, and I want to expand on that. But we're going to set those general goals, and those are the things that we'll stick with for whatever period we're working with, whether it's the next month, the next 6 months, or the next year. The third step that we're going to do in our financial planning is creating a roadmap to reach those goals. And that roadmap, just like we talked about when we were doing our SWOT planning, it needs to be specific and it needs to be measurable. It doesn't do any of us any good if we have goals that we really can't track on a regular basis and measure so that we know whether it's working or not. Those really specific goals could be things like, I want to sell some of my assets. Maybe when we're in that first step and we're reviewing what we have, we determine that, perhaps we have some real estate somewhere that's not making us any money or even costing us money. Now may be the time to unload that particular asset. Perhaps you decide that you want to reduce some of your inventory. Again, if you have accounts receivable, we're looking at that collection period. One goal might be to focus on improving that collection period, dropping it from 45 days to 30 days, whatever that goal may be. And even if it's just a couple of days, you would be surprised to see what kind of effect that can have on your cash flow, just collecting those bills due a couple of days sooner than you have in the past. Lastly, the increasing prices, that's always good to look at. That's something that I'll always battle with my own clients because deep down, none of us wants to increase prices. That's a scary sounding thing. But I can tell you in my 13 years of doing this, I don't think I have ever had a client who increased prices and it adversely affected their business, especially if your business is selling something, if your business is selling something that's consumable. Those are the times when clients may take a little bit more note. And when I say consumable, I mean, think about fuel. When gas prices go up even a penny or two, yes, we all notice that, but we still pay it. But most of us are selling things that are not consumable on that type of basis. It may be something that we buy once or twice a year. I can tell you, Kelly, for things that I buy once or twice a year, if the price goes up a few dollars, I'm probably not even going to notice, much less quit buying those things. So that's a good time to think about raising prices. The fourth step is identify some potential obstacles in the market and have a plan to minimize those, and also think about some potential opportunities and have a plan to take advantage of them. We can't see into the future. We don't know everything that's going to happen. And in this step, I don't want anybody to focus on those potential bad things or all of the good things that could happen, or you'll get stuck there because that list will never end. And again, this is another good time to have that third party in on the conversation. You know, if you're talking to me, I may be looking at those things in the market a little bit differently and can help identify some of the primary things. Same thing with your CPA, whoever you choose to look at. You know, it could be things like the housing market. Of course, I'm in Amarillo. I assume that it's probably the same wherever you're at in Texas. The housing market is absolutely booming. Prices have gone up. If you're in a business where perhaps you're selling lumber, good for you. Now is definitely the time to be doing that. You want to make a plan to capitalize on that. If perhaps you're in a business where you're going to be buying some real estate, we need to think about maybe pushing that off a little bit so you're not going to be paying such a high price for that real estate. One of the things in particular that I'm watching this year post-COVID is the labor market. I expect that we're going to see a flooded labor market late this year, early next year. If you think that you might be hiring sometime soon, that works out really well for you because you may be able to be a little bit more choosy with who you're going to hire. And the last thing that we're going to do with that financial step, step 5, is the same thing again that we did with our dynamic business planning, is monitor your financial plan and revise it as needed. You obviously want to do this at least on an annual basis, but depending on your industry and the state of the economy, you could do it more often. For all of us in oil and gas, I can promise you they're doing most of these things on a daily basis. For the rest of us, doing it annually or maybe even twice a year is probably sufficient. Kelly, I have yet to see a client who didn't do some form of financial planning that was able to grow successfully. I've kind of seen the opposite. What happens is a company may start to grow and things are going well, and if they haven't done any financial planning, they can get overwhelmed, and really that's what leads to failure. So I always encourage my clients to do some form of financial planning as they can, because you absolutely have to have it to be successful.
Excellent. That's a great set of steps and great advice. And like you say, monitoring it is a critical thing, looking back on what you said you were going to achieve versus what you have achieved. And I frankly think the monthly minimum is a good suggestion for how often you look at that. And also that third party to walk alongside you and to be available to advise is critical. And for people who may not have a regular CPA and maybe just looking for an advisor, you can get a great help from your local SBDC or also your local chapter of SCORE, who may be able to give you a mentor with experience, and they won't cost you anything. And so, Gina, we have another quick question for you, and it's about where people can find good information online to help them with their financial planning. If they haven't got a structure or are thinking about revising it, where can they get some help online?
Absolutely. Well, I'm biased, of course, but I always think the SBDC is an excellent resource for that. I mentioned that I am in Amarillo and certainly always glad to work with clients in the Panhandle. But one of the things that I have loved most about the SBDC is that we have locations nationwide. So wherever you're at, there's going to be an SBDC there to help you. And as you mentioned, Kelly, all of those appointments are free of charge. Really, the best way to find your local SBDC is to go onto our national site. It's americassbdc.org. And on there, you'll find I believe it says Find Your Local SBDC tab. All you have to do is plug in your zip code and you'll get all of the contact information for your local SBDC. Many times you can go on the website, and most of us have all kinds of templates available there. But I certainly encourage people to make an appointment with a consultant to work on that. One of the second places that I would check is SBA.gov. I mentioned that you can certainly learn how to do much of this planning on your own, and they have some really good training tools there. One is the Learning Center. There are some videos available there to walk you through learning a little bit more about how to read your financial statements and do some of this planning. And they also have a brand new program that they just launched called Ascent. It's similar to the Learning Center, but it's geared more towards women entrepreneurs, and it'll have some of that same dynamic financial planning, the training and the tools on there.
Excellent, Gina, thank you. And we're going to be sharing those links in our final slides. And like I said before, these slides are available to everybody who's joined us. We'll be emailing you a link, and they're on our website. So you can get all of that information if you didn't manage to keep up with Gina. So thank you, Gina. I'm going to move along, and I'm going to announce that our live Q&A feed is now open, so please start typing your questions. We have colleagues back of house that you cannot see that are actually going to answer a lot of questions directly. So if you ask a question, keep an eye on it, because you may get a direct answer from my colleagues. They may not publish your question, but you may get an answer. And they are going to publish the more broadly relevant questions, and what we'd like you to do in the audience is to like the questions you'd like to hear the answer to most, and what we're going to do then is prioritize the questions with the most likes. So go ahead and type your questions and keep an eye on what's published and like the ones that you'd like to hear about. And so finally, I'm going to talk to our last panelist, who is Angelo Picarillo, and I'd like to welcome you, Angelo. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you for inviting me. I'm also an SBC the advisor. I'm in Laredo, Texas, but I'm also a business owner. So I want to maybe discuss some issues from a SBC advisor, but also as a business owner. So one of the question is, now that you have the PPP and the IDLE, and you use the money now, what do you do now? So as a business owner, I have applied for the IDLE loan. I have the financing. I did apply. I also applied for the PPP funding, the first one, and I submitted my forbearance, and also applied for the second one, which I'm currently utilizing. So now you have this money, and you're working with your business, with your employees. So what do you do now? How do you keep it going? Because the money is going to run out pretty soon. So if you're a retail operator, the general consensus is that it's not going to die anytime soon, no matter what people have said. We're talking about brick and mortar. However, the way you operate the business is going to change dramatically. So you have to be ready. As a retailer, you're used to seeing people coming to the store, which have made the majority of your revenue since you opened, maybe in the past, people coming in. While you may have a website, you use social media, and most likely, you have a listed email you use, you see a lot of customers coming through the door. But what's happening, now that you have some retailers during the pandemic have closed their doors, and then they reopen again, now you have to start rethinking about what am I going to do with my store now? I'm using the funds. Now I have all this open space. Do I need all this open space? So because there's a lot of closure happening. So you have to ask yourself as a business owner some of these questions. One, I know a lot of people don't want to hear it, but is it worth keeping my store open? So you have to follow up with these questions. If you say yes, then do I keep it the same way as I had it before? How is my store set up? Is it set up for online selling, or is it set up only for people coming in? What about my staff? What kind of marketing? What kind of inventory? And how is that going to affect my cash flow? Inventory is very, very important, because now you're at the stage where you have to go to the markets to buy inventory for the holidays. So how do you do it? What kind of revenue stream you plan to have? So you have to really look at this information. Okay. Also, maybe if you decide, can you run your business online? Those are some of the information decision you have to come up. But something that might be able to save you some money, can you work with your landlord on structuring the lease the way you want to, maybe to give you some relief on your lease. So that's one way to maybe stretch out your money. So if you decide to keep your physical location, a brick and mortar, maybe the key is to set up some time with your landlord about renegotiating your lease. If you don't own the building, maybe do it. Right now, commercial real estate is not in great shape right now. It's picking up again because the industry analysis and banks don't foresee getting better in the short term. Hopefully in the long term, maybe by the end of this year. So what does that mean to you as a business owner and a leaser? Well, you have a leverage in negotiating your space because, the owners don't want the space vacant. So what are some ways that you can maybe renegotiate your lease? First thing, maybe talk to your landlord. If you can see you make changes to your lease that you're both happy, perfect. So talk to your landlord. What if it doesn't work when you talk to your landlord? Maybe seek legal assistance and ask for one, maybe whether you can have a full or partial rent abatement for base rent. Sometimes maybe you can use the common and maintenance vote and agree upon a period of time when you're going to have this. Another option you can have may be full or partial rent deferral, which a lot of businesses are doing right now, to be repaid over installment at the end of the lease or some other agreed time that you can do with your landlord. All of this is done basically to save your cash flow, to keep you going. Maybe application of the security deposit you originally have to cover some of the deferred costs. That might be able to help you keep you going. Maybe you can full lease renegotiation again, including terms, rent, size, and space under lease. If you're right now, maybe you're a brand new business owner and you're getting ready to sign a lease, maybe you want to take into consideration the next one. By building an escape clause to account for acts of God, like the pandemic, or other events that might lead to drastic loss of revenue. So all these are there for you to think about, maybe to help extend your finance and your cash and get you to the good times, which I believe they're coming.
That's great. Thank you.
That's right. The second question, looking forward to what are the marketing strategy you can focus on now to work yourself? Well, while shopping in stores is down, the long-term customer shopping in stores isn't going anywhere. Okay, according to experts at a micro level, the store is still critically important, and it's going to be the epicenter of consumer. So more than 3/4 of retail is still going to occur in stores. Okay, so the brick and mortar is still going to function, is going to do very well. That means customers will still shop in stores the way they are shopping, but it's going to be in a changing pace. So a consumer feels safer, they will come back to the stores. But that means that the store you have right now is going to be different. You have to rethink it. I have a business, I'm rethinking the way I'm going to operate. So maybe you have to go and do more online selling, collect online, maybe have people buy and pick up at the store. So you have to change your strategy the way you have, and to be able to go for the future. Because I think the future right now for small business owners, I think the next 4 or 5 months, a lot of people are going to be buying a lot of goods. So you want to be one of those customers, those stores that attracts a lot of people. So I'm very optimistic for retail. You just have to change your structure and try to go forward. In the meantime, save your cash, because you have to have cash. So I'm here at the SBDC, and I work with a lot of customers, and I try to help as much as I can, but also bring the perspective also of a store owner who's been in business for 20 years.
That's great, Angelo. Thank you so much. And I just want to say it is great to have somebody who is a combination of an SBDC advisor, but also has real experience of running their own brick and mortar business. So it's great to have your perspective. And we're about to now transition to the live Q&A phase of the event. And people can ask questions of any of our three panelists. And if anyone owns a brick and mortar business and has a question for Angelo, please ask it now. And I am going to hand over to my colleague, Jarvis Brewer, to take over the live Q&A section of the event. So over to you, Jarvis.
Thank you so much, Kelly. And thank you to all of our panelists as well as all of our attendees here today. Continue to submit your questions as well as look at the questions that have been submitted by your fellow attendees and like the questions that you would like to be answered. So we're going to go through as many of these as we can. Obviously, with time, we probably will not get to every question. However, there will be contact information at the end of this Q&A for you to reach out if you need further assistance. So for this first question, I see that David Elizondo has submitted a link in the Q&A, but I'm going to address this question directly to the SBA, and hopefully David can provide a little bit more clarity about this question because it seems a lot of people are interested in this. The question is, how can I determine whether my business is in a low income area? So David, could you elaborate how someone can find the tools and to see if they are in one of these areas which would qualify them for the IDLE advance, the target?
Right. On one of our links that we have available, Jarvis, is SBA IDLE .policymap.com. So I don't know if you can share that link with everyone else too, to have them punch in their address. Make sure I'm not muted. Okay, I am talking. They can put in their address to determine whether or not they are considered in a low income area. So there is an actual interactive map that will help determine whether or not you do indeed fall in a low income area.
Thank you so much. And I see that you have already submitted that link, and I hope that we can at least direct our attendees to find that link as well. Michael, Fauji in the background, I know that y'all can highlight that again for anyone who's interested in finding that information. But thank you so much for that, David.
And then I see Eric mentioned a comment along those lines about disaster assistance. And Eric, to answer your question, that you can apply for both the PPP and the IDLE and the SVOG assistance program. So for sure, you do want to follow up with our website here on April 8th when it goes live about the SVOG. I think there is a question in there that does talk about the second draw of PPP to see how much you have received.
Wonderful. I'll stick right with you, and I'll actually just ask Eric's question so that all of our attendees get that question and we can address it. So David, here is Eric Shepard's question. The question is, the first speaker, which was you, David, said we have to open up a SAM account in order to apply for the SVOG. Is this true even if we've gotten an IDLE advance and participate in both PPP programs? So that's the question.
Right, and so to elaborate a little more in detail, so with the IDLE advance, you apply directly through SBA's website for the Shuttered Venues Operator Grant, SVOG. For my military folks, it's Sierra, Victor, Oscar, Papa. It's going to be through grants.gov. So that's why it's important to get your profile on sam.gov, because when the portal goes live, it's not going to be through SBA's website. It's going to be through grants.gov.
Thank you, sir. Moving right along, we have a question from Patricia Bradley, and I'm going to direct this to both Gina and to Angelo. I think you both hit on this question in your opening remarks. So Patricia's question is, what marketing strategies do you recommend for businesses that offer services rather than products? I'll begin with you, Gina. What kind of strategies do you recommend for people who have services rather than physical, tangible products?
It's a good question. I'll throw out two ideas that I like most with my clients that are in services. One is establishing yourself as the expert in that industry, whether it be nationwide, worldwide, or local, whatever it is that works for your particular business. One of the very best ways to do that is a little bit old-fashioned in terms of technology, but it's have a blog and post on that blog regularly. And when you're thinking about what to post, think about what are the things that your potential clients are searching for. What are those very specific questions? And those are exactly the kinds of things that you want to address in a blog post. Because if I'm a potential client and I'm out searching, trying to find the answer to my question, if you can put that specific wording in your blog post, it's going to help out with your SEO. I may come across that before anything else. And automatically, in my mind, you must be an expert on whatever it is my question's about. The second thing that I would do is really focus on your brand and you as the business owner as the brand. As a service provider, let's just take CPAs, for example. People don't really want to do business with your group they want to do business with you as a person. So some of the great ways to establish your brand as an individual and let your potential clients get to know you is using social media, making posts on there, not just generic posts, do some videos, do some live videos. They can be pre-recorded, whatever you're comfortable with. But get behind that camera and let your potential clients really get to know you, because it really goes back to being the expert in your industry, that we want to do business with the expert and with somebody that we know and trust.
Thank you for that, Gina. And do you have anything further, Angela?
Yeah, I'd just like to add everything Tina said. Perfect. I think that you should do that. I'd just like to add, and whether you have a service business or a brick and mortar business, there's a lot of competition out there right now. So if you focus on providing great customer service, where you're known for your customer service, you're going to attract a lot of customers and retain customers, especially in these pandemic days. So I think what Tina said, but also Gina said, but also provide customer service and just become the best. Because on the phone, you know, you're talking to customers. How many times have we talked to somebody and we just hung up? Or, you know, so we want them to come back to us. So customer service, I would go with that.
Thank you for that. Thank you both for your insight into that question. I'm actually going to relay this question to both our SBDC representatives. Once again, I'll begin with you, Angelo. The question is, how do I market to industry? Is there a resource industrial buyers use? So, for example, I have a product or service and I want to market it to a specific industry, such as B2B. I have a business I want to market to people in the auto industry or other businesses in the tech industry. How do I market to an industry? Is there a tool? Is there a resource that can position me better to market? So I'll start with you, Angelo.
Yes, we do. We have at the Small Business Development Center. It's open to everyone. It's called SBDC Net, where we actually can provide you with marketing information statewide on any type of businesses, and it is free of charge. So we can assist you with that. It takes about 3 weeks to provide that information. It can be anywhere from a business plan to marketing statistics, all the way to individual streets. So that's something that we can provide here with us statewide.
Do you have anything further for that, Gina, as well?
Sure, I'll throw out 2 more things. One of my favorites for B2B marketing is actually trade shows. Thankfully, now that Texas is open, we're going to start to see some more of those later this year. That's a great place to meet new people and to meet a lot of new people at once in a very specific industry. And the second thing that I would do is make sure that you have a really solid email list. Build that list with people from those industries. And a lot of those are going to be people that you might meet at the trade shows. And when I say trade shows, I don't mean that you have to fly out to another state and go to some massive show. Those are great. We have lots of local shows in our areas that can be helpful as well. So those are 2 great ways to reach those markets.
Absolutely. Networking, trade shows, great examples of not only just meeting people, other businesses, and positioning yourself in front of them, but also potential clients. So thank you both for that tag team effort on that question. This next question comes from Sherry. I'm going to relay it to you, David. It's an SBA-centered question. The question is, what can you tell us about the EIDLE loan amount increases, and when will they be available to apply, and see if we did qualify for a higher amount instead of the old cap of 150K? So let me reiterate the question again. What can you tell us about the EIDLE loan amount increases, and when will we be able to apply and see if we did qualify for the new higher amount as opposed to the old one being the 150K?
Got it. It's funny that that question is being posed because I was trying to be proactive and actually reached out to the Office of Disaster Assistance this morning in anticipation for this question. So the exact response, and I'll read it verbatim to the person that was posing the question, is businesses that receive a loan subject to the current limits do not need to submit a request for an increase at this time. SBA will reach out directly via email, so make sure it's .gov, and provide more details about how businesses can request an increase closer to the April 6th implementation dates. Any new loan applications and any loans in process where the new loan limits are implemented will automatically be considered for loans covering 24 months of economic injury up to a maximum of $500,000. So that goes to say that the max loan amount before was $150,000. Now it's up to $500,000. So hopefully that answers that question.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. And thank you again for doing homework in anticipation. I'm sure our audience and attendees definitely appreciate it. So we'll move right along, and we're in the last quarter of the hour. This has gone by very quickly, but I'm going to do somewhat of a rapid fire, beginning with a very straightforward question, which I'm going to give to you, Gina. Okay, so the question is, if we already got an EIDLE 10K grant, so I'm assuming we got the original EIDLE advance, not the targeted grant. Excuse me, not the targeted EIDLE advance. If we already got an EIDLE 10K grant last year, can we qualify for the low income advance as well? Can we also get the targeted one this year? Over to you, Gina.
So the advance that came out in early 2020 and the targeted advance right now are actually the same thing. So if they received the full 10,000 earlier last year, then the answer would be no. The purpose of the targeted grant is to really make those whole who did not receive the full 10,000 earlier last year. So let's say you applied early on when there was still plenty of funding in April, and you were awarded $5,000 because you have 5 employees. Now with the new targeted grant, you will receive an email that invites you to essentially reapply, and you may be able to receive the additional $5,000, making you whole with the 10.
Exactly. So basically, if you got it before and it was full amount 10,000, it's not a new amount of funds. You wouldn't receive any other funds. If you got it last year and you got, let's see, 5,000 and you were eligible for 10, you may be able to get another 5,000 this year. Correct. All right. So another question, again from Eric. I'm going to just again around the targeted EIDLE. So I'll give this question to Angelo. The question is: we are in a targeted EIDLE area, but have not heard back about the second round of EIDLE advances since an email from SBA about 5 weeks ago. The SBA site says our application has been submitted. Is there a backlog, or have the funds already been distributed? So they applied, haven't heard anything since about 5 weeks ago. Is there a backlog? Should they just be patient? What do you recommend?
Yeah, what Gina said, I mean, you received the EIDLE advance in the beginning, and you're in the targeted area. The SBA is the key, is going to be in contact with you. So I received an EIDLE advance, I received an EIDLE loan in advance, but I have not received a letter from the SBA. Now, one of my customers who's in a targeted area, they have received that request. So they are applying now to the SBA. So that would be a good question for maybe David regarding the SBA, right?
Yeah, and I was actually going to piggyback off of Angelo.